Statistically speaking, at this point in time, I think I've spent about 80% of my entire existence being a sibling. And although it's been a thankless job for about 200% of that time, I think I can finally admit that there is probably no relationship that has given me more than the one that I have had with my sibling. Now, just for some context, I'm an older sibling, the firstborn daughter, which, in all honesty, should have been enough warning for my parents until they decided to go ahead and have another hell raising offspring, which would be nature's greatest gift to me, my younger sister. Now, talking about having sisters or even just siblings for that matter, one can draw so many possible relationships, and that can depend on the number of siblings you had, or if you had siblings at all, the kind of family setting, the kind of relationship you had within the family with your siblings, and so on. And of course, one can argue that having a sibling in the first place is entirely upon the parents, and it's not really an individual's choice. And I respect that. I agree with that. But keeping that specific aspect aside, from what I have experienced, the kind of setting a person has grown up with, especially with respect to their relationship with their siblings, it truly reflects on the kind of person that they grow into becoming. And I think the more you get into it, the more obvious certain signs become. And the more you get into understanding this kind of reflection in a person's personality or their identity, I think the more obvious certain things become. For example, after some time, when you walk into a room, you can start identifying based on certain actions or certain behaviors which one of them is an older sibling, which one of them is a younger sibling, a middle child, an only child, whatever. For example, as in my case, most elder siblings that I know and have met are probably the most emotionally damaged and mentally unstable people in the room. And most of the times, I've seen this insanity usually pan out in one of two ways. Either that person will incline towards becoming a complete selfish narcissist, or they would end up becoming someone who's pretty much a people pleaser. On top of which, I've seen and even experienced this to a certain extent that elder siblings usually end up with this inner need to parent everyone around them. And the most obvious explanation of that would be that being an elder sibling, you become a third parent by proxy. You become the pancake child, you become the guinea pig, and basically you become the recipient of all kinds of expectations and all kinds of, attention from parents and family members and basically everyone around you. You are pushed into 100 different directions because your parents want you to be the best at everything all at the same time, while also being a good student, while also being a role model for your younger sibling, while also being responsible in taking care of the house, and truly the list goes on. And if you think about it, in theory, all of these events should probably lead to a very well rounded person, a person who's responsible, a person who knows what their strengths and weaknesses are, a person who's self aware, a person who is confident and sure of themselves because they have been exposed to so many different things. But unfortunately, that is not what happens because despite doing all of this, despite serving all of these purposes, you barely ever get that kind of recognition. You are barely acknowledged for whatever it is that you do. And especially with your parents, I've seen that nothing you do is ever enough. And, you know, you keep working and working and working in hopes that someday you will reach that point where you finally get that validation, you finally get that approval. But the only thing you get in return is this very dry kind of a reaction, something along the lines of, oh, all of this is something that you're supposed to do. So don't expect any kind of celebration for it. And I really feel for my fellow elder siblings. I really do. Like, my heart goes out to them. Like, I feel your pain on a cellular level. And this is the point where it becomes obvious why people usually turn out one of two ways, as I mentioned. It's because after going through all of this for years on end, you either just say fuck it and I'm just going to do whatever I want, and you just go ahead with your life, you become selfish, you don't look back, which is problematic in itself. We're not going to get into that. Or on the other hand, you just get caught up in this cycle of doing more and more and more and more, and still never feeling like you've done enough because no one told you that you're doing enough. Whereas when we look at our younger siblings, especially when they're in the same stage as we were as teenagers, when they're growing up and finally becoming adults, you come to realize that these guys are playing on a whole other field altogether. Like, for some reason, your floor becomes their ceiling. Like, I've seen my sister do literally the bare minimum, or even less than that if there's a level below bare minimum, and getting celebrated for it as if, I don't know, she's won the Nobel Prize or something. While I don't even get that kind of acknowledgement for doing something 10 times more than that. Like, that is bare minimum for me. Ki, oh, itna to you should do. Like, itna to you need to do. You're older, you're more responsible. So, you take that kind of responsibility. She isn't old enough to do all that. I'm like, she's old enough to vote. She can pick up her plate. And yes, I needed to rant about this to get this weight off my chest. But coming back to my original point, I love my sister so much. And lately, I've been seeing all of these posts on Instagram that have been making me really emotional. Like, people have started posting a lot about how you spend so much of your life, like the first half of your life, with your siblings, and then suddenly you guys have completely different lives. You don't even spend time together, you barely see each other. And that made me so sad because now I'm really at that stage where my sister and I have completely different lives. We are living lives in two different cities. We have completely different schedules. We barely see each other. We barely have the time to talk. And even when we do talk, it's usually about the more important stuff, which is great. Like, it's good that we're staying in touch and we're discussing important stuff that goes on in our life. But there are times when I want to have that random moment at night where I'm making Maggie at midnight and she walks into the kitchen and we just play music and randomly burst into singing and dancing, having an impromptu concert in the middle of the night while making Maggie. And at the end of the day, no matter how much you hate them, or how much you get angry at them, or how much you even fight with them, you feel so grateful to have someone to share this experience with. And on top of that, it's such a bittersweet feeling to see your siblings grow up and become adults. Because so far, I've always felt like the two of us have had such intertwined lives, and so many things overlapped with each other. But now it's not the case. The two of us have very different lives. She's an adult. She's going out with her friends. She's drinking. She's partying. She's also studying. She's working hard. She's building her own life, her career, her relationships. And now I'm the observer. I'm no longer a person who's involved in that part of her life. I'm just looking at all of that from a distance. And that is something that makes me really sad at times. Another reason why I have this kind of immense gratitude for having a sibling, especially a younger sister, is the realization of how much I've grown as a person. Because you develop such a unique tolerance and patience to the most annoying things possible. For example, when I was living in a hostel during college, I would see people complain about the most stupid things. Like, oh, this person is keeping the fan at such a high speed, or, they sleep with the lights on, or something very basic. And I was so tempted to yell at them that, is this what you find annoying? Like, have you never had a sibling who walks into the room, turns off the fan, turns off the AC, and then leaves the room while you're sleeping? Or have you never had a sibling where you've had to fight for a remote? Or even worse, when you're trying to change a channel and they stand in front of the TV so that you can't change it? Like, if you've never had those kind of experiences, I don't think you grow as a person. I truly believe that. And another very fun thing about having a sibling is, how people have this thing going on about girl math and boy math? Let me introduce you to sibling math. Imagine this scenario: you're cooking something, Maggie, popcorn, chicken nuggets, whatever you want. Sibling math states that whatever is being prepared is going to be divided equally till the last grain. It doesn't matter what you're making. And if you are the one cooking, you can demand that the person who cooks gets an extra spoon or gets an extra quantity. That's just how it works. Sibling math. All of these things that you go through as a sibling, elder or younger, doesn't matter. They truly help you become a better person. You can't argue with me on that. Nope, I'm not welcoming opinions on this. Now, so far, I've talked about elder siblings, I've talked about younger siblings. Next, I want to talk about a category of people that almost seem alien to me, and that would be the category of only children. In all my years of existence, I don't think I've met a single only child that I haven't felt like punching in the face. Really hard. And I used to think that it's only because I am a bitter person. But no, this is a shared experience of everyone who knows that person. I'm not making this shit up. Trust me. And yes, before you come at me being all defensive, I've already mentioned this. I respect that and I understand that having siblings is not an individual's choice. It's not their own personality trait, it's completely upon the parents. But you tell me, why have I not met a single only child that isn't completely insufferable? Like, it doesn't matter what kind of parents they've had. Like, they might have had really strict parents, they might have had really chill parents. But in either case, the child somehow turns out to be really entitled for some reason. I can't explain it. It's just the kind of attitude that they have. So, I don't know. I think they either end up becoming adults with like a weird victim complex, or adults with a weird god complex. Like, for some reason, I can't get myself to completely trust people who are only children. And I know that it's not their fault, it's not their choice. to be the only child or to not have any siblings, but they definitely don't share certain personality traits that maybe I have or I expect as a person who's grown up with siblings. Like, for some reason, certain only children that I've met, they seem very proud of the fact that they've never had to share their things with someone. Like, bro, do you not realize how sad that is? Not to mention the weird social anxiety so many of them have because they haven't grown up with people around them to talk to on a regular basis, or people who make fun of them and people who humble them on a regular basis. So, yeah, that is something that really comes across from an only child when you talk to them, even if it's for the first time. Like, if I'm standing in front of a person who doesn't have any siblings, who's been raised as an only child, I just feel this very weird imbalance in energy. I don't know how to explain it. It's just this feeling that I have when I'm talking to one of them. And of course, I don't mean any hate to only children. Like, it's not their fault, and it's really a it is what it is kind of a situation. But with all due respect, I don't relate to them, nor do I want to, and just stay away from me. I don't want that energy in my life. Like, you've never been checked, you've never been humbled, you've never been put in your place emotionally and physically with a very random WWE SmackDown from your sibling when they walk into the room, and it shows. When it comes to making friends or, you know, dating or just people that I generally feel like I have a good vibe with, for some reason, it always turns out the elder siblings that I have a better time with. I can't explain it, but we share that traumatic experience of having to raise a child that hasn't been our own child. But still, we've been the parent, we've been that child who is expected to be perfect, the person who is dumbed on with all of those expectations. So, yeah, you feel that kind of comfort when you're talking to other people who have also had similar experiences. So, yeah, so far, the best dates that I've had, the best friendship that I've had is with people who have younger siblings, which is very ironic because most of my closest friends, they're all younger siblings. Even the last guy that I seriously dated was a younger sibling, which is probably why it didn't last because younger siblings are not givers. They're just not. They're so used to getting their own shit. They're so used to things being their way. I don't think they've ever really had to work hard to, do the same for another person. And again, not blaming them, it's just how they grow up. Even with some of my closest friends, I have grown up with them, I've known them from a very young age, throughout school, throughout college. But this kind of difference still exists, no matter how responsible they become, even if they're working, they're earning, they have their own house, they have their own cars, some of them. But for some reason, I always feel that kind of gap when I'm talking to them. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them to death. But it's very hard to take them seriously when they've had a completely different trajectory. I'm not saying that they haven't had difficulties in their own lives, but I don't know. They just don't relate to the trauma of being an elder sibling. The experiences don't kind of overlap simply on the premise of them being a younger sibling and me not being one. Circling back to the original reason why I started talking about all of this in the first place, I really miss having my sister around. It really sucks that we spent all of these years together and suddenly we're off in two different places, living separate lives. as if all of that didn't happen. And yes, it's undeniable that having a sibling is like having a lifelong friend. It doesn't matter where you are, you always have that one person you can call, irrespective of what time it is or what situation you're in. But still, not having them around and, having completely different individual lives, it's never an easy transition. It's never something that's easy to accept. And in addition to all of this, I'm getting closer to that stage of my life where I might become a parent eventually. Like people my age are getting married, they're having kids. So it really makes you think what kind of a family setting you would want. Or, what kind of an environment would you like to expect from your future life? And does that future involve having kids? It's a very random thought and it's still far off in the future, but it's definitely something to think about. It doesn't matter whether I'm having human kids or whether I'm adopting pets. It's good to have a bunch. It's good to have something that feels like a family. It's really good to have something that feels like a support system because at the end of the day, they're all that you're going to have. And that is something that I've experienced time and again with my sister. Truth be told, I wouldn't have been able to survive so many things if I didn't have this person standing by my side, sharing that experience with me, even if she wasn't directly involved. And of course, I have very clearly expressed my sympathy that I have for my fellow elder siblings. But that doesn't mean that I lose any love for all the younger siblings out there. Because whether I like it or not, whether I enjoyed it in the past or not, my younger sister is my child. I don't care what anyone says. She is my child. I have raised her just as much, if not more, than my own parents did. I see so much of myself in her. It makes me really proud. And especially now that she's growing older, she's becoming her own person. I keep seeing her make these decisions for herself and grow into becoming a more responsible person. And even though those decisions might be really stupid in that moment, and I would feel like jumping in and helping her, I would feel like, you know, getting to her rescue and saving her from so many things, only to realize that I can't do that, which is the fun part in itself. Like, it's so funny. I would be in a completely different city, my sister in another city, and my mom would call me just to complain that, oh, look at your sister. This is what she's doing. She's not picking up our calls. She's going out at night, blah, 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 blah. Talk to her. And even though you feel a little pissed in that moment because you want to correct them and you don't want them to get in trouble, especially when they're out in another city altogether, but it still feels nice that you have that kind of right over someone where, you know, you can look out for them with that authority, yet also feel that kind of concern and love for someone. I don't feel that there's anything as pure as that. Nothing tops that. There is no relationship that is ever going to be like the one that you have with your siblings. Ever. Because it's a very weird yet very unique amalgamation of different relationships all packed into one. Sometimes it's a brother sister kind of relationship. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes you're the worst enemies. Sometimes it's a parent child relationship. And the best part is that it keeps going back and forth. So you get to experience that roller coaster of relationships all from just one equation. And you know how people say that you don't choose your family? They're right, you don't. You choose your friends, you build your chosen family with people that you meet outside of your actual blood relatives. But sometimes I feel that your siblings choose you in a very weird way. The two of you are tied together in a very special bond. And even if there's a 1% chance that that's true, I'm really happy that my sister chose me. Because even though I hate her guts sometimes, I absolutely love having her. It's a blessing. No matter how much we fight, no matter how much I try to deny it, it is a blessing. And if you've grown up with siblings and if you feel the same way, even in the slightest, this is your sign to reach out to them and tell them that. Because trust me, no one has tolerated you as much as your siblings have. Believe me. This was episode 10 of Thought Vault Siblings.